All right, welcome to the Why Dad podcast. We are your hosts, Paul Wandry and Andrew Stopelstead, and we are on a mission to find out what it means to be a dad, husband, and man, and how to become the best versions of ourselves along the way. And to help us to do that, today we are honored to have on our show Matt Edmundson, investor, e-commercer, podcast maestro, digital David, and dad. And with over 20 years in the game, Matt's a seasoned e-commerce leader and investor. He's passionate about helping small digital businesses, his digital Davids, take on the giants and grow with purpose. He's also hosts of multiple shows, including the e-commerce podcast and Push to Be More, and runs Pod Junction to help brands grow through podcasting. And when he's not doing all that, he's in his workshop, turning wood into wonder. Ooh. Matt, welcome to the show.
Turning wood into wonder. Love that. That should be a t-shirt slogan. That should be the name of my YouTube channel. Turning wood into wonder. There you go. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. I like the intro. It's funny when you go on podcasts and people talk about you. Do you know what I mean? And you're listening to the bio and go, oh, I'd forgotten about that. Oh, yes, we do that, don't we? And it's always quite interesting hearing it from somebody else's words.
Yeah. No, we have yet to encounter that ourselves, but I can imagine. And yeah, did we do a good job covering the bases? Did we miss anything?
Did great job. Yeah, well done. I've definitely had a lot worse podcast intros. This is Matt, and he does my head in. So we're going to have a conversation about why that is. That would be the podcast from my kids, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of kids, you have 3, is that correct?
Yes, 3 amazing kids, wonderful kids. Super proud of all of them. My eldest is... you know what, Paul, I lose count. He's either 23 or 24. It sounds really sad when I don't know the actual. I could work it out. He's turning 24 in a couple months. My youngest son, my middle child, he's 21, 22, somewhere around there. And Zoe, my daughter, my youngest, she's 18.
Okay.
We're in that phase of life where 2 of my children have left home. One of them is still just about in the nest. So yeah, really interesting phase of life.
So professional dad already brought them all to adulthood.
I've not killed them, and they've not killed me, and so I'll take the win. They're still talking to me, which I think I'll also take as a win.
Yeah.
And we all get on really quite well, which is lovely. Yeah, I always had this mantra at work, and I still hold it to be dear now, even though the kids are at a little bit different phase of life. But you've got to succeed at home first, right? And that's true for any entrepreneur. I see too many people sacrificing family for the sake of their business, which makes no sense to me. And I never wanted to do that. And so I can look back. Last week, my son announced to my eldest son, Josh, he announced to the world that he's getting married. He's engaged to a beautiful young lady from Indonesia called Abby, who is just lovely. We're very, very excited for them. And so I love the phase of life we're in, but I do look back on the whole thing of being a dad and go, yeah, we made the right choices. Not always, but I wanted to succeed at home first, and I think we've done that on the whole.
Amazing.
That's a really good point. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was just going to say that's such a great perspective, and especially here in the U.S. culture, like it's if you don't succeed at your job, can you really succeed at home? Mm-hmm. And so to be able to have that correct perspective of you have to succeed at home in order to be, and again, success is all a mindset and a subjective mindset. Putting the emphasis on what really should be important in life over what comes secondary is something that is very easy for all of us, especially men, to forget or take for granted or put on hold because we're the providers, knowing that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it, for men? Because I think men are and I don't want to over-stereotype, but men tend to be quite competitive, right? And so men love games where there's borders and there's a score. So whether it's football, as in proper football like soccer, or American football, where you don't actually kick the ball. But let's not go there. But do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what the game is. There's boundaries and there's a score. And And men love to know what the rules are, and they want to know if they're keeping score.
Right.
And work is one of those things where it's easy to keep score. And it's easy to get your value and esteem from that because you can keep score. I worked, I have earned the paycheck, I have done this. Very much driven by that, I think, that divine part of us, which actually is driven to provide. I think it's part of who God made us. And so you mix those two things together, and I think it's very easy for men to overwork. Because if I go to work, on the whole, there can be esteem there. I achieve things, I achieve my salary, I achieve targets, we get new clients. There's a reward. Whereas bringing up kids, especially in the early years, there's no, you talk about trying to keep score, that they're alive, I'm alive, that's the only score I can keep. And I'm still talking to my wife just about. And so I think it's easy to misplace priorities because it's easier to understand when you're doing better at work than when you're being better as a dad, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think like an element of knowing what the metrics are, like how to keep score at work, is probably feels a lot safer and more comfortable than the daily unknowns of at home. What have you done to help navigate that and to help achieve that success at home first mentality?
There's a great analogy, isn't there? And everyone's probably heard of it, in terms of if you take a glass jar and you have to get in big rocks, middle rocks, and sand. If you start with the sand, then the middle rocks, and then the big rocks, well, you're screwed, right? But if you put the big rocks in first, everything else fits. And I think actually being successful, whatever that means in terms of being a dad, a husband, a man, entrepreneur, so much of it is about consistency, and it is so much about making consistent choices, about words we don't like to use, like discipline. It's so much about that. It's about making the small decisions, knowing that actually over 20 years they have a big impact. So the decision to stop work and have a meal with my family every night at 6 o'clock, to make sure I made time for that, to make sure that at least once a week my wife and I have a date night, and it is in the calendar and no one can really interfere with that. Sure, we change it. You're talking once or twice a year. So it's about putting the big rocks. It's about putting the priorities in the diary and then absolutely sticking to them, even when you don't want to. So there are so many times when I've had deadlines or when something's going wrong, and the last thing I want to do is stop work and go home and have dinner with the family because I just want to solve the problem. Again, a very masculine trait, isn't it? I have a problem, therefore I must fix it.
Right.
But actually going, no, I need to put that to one side because, to quote Russell Crowe, what we do now echoes in eternity. And so it's that mentality, isn't it? It's the ability to see that small decisions add up to a big impact. And I'm not just saying it's just about the fact that I was home at dinner every night, but it's the small things like that. It's the priorities. It's getting things in the diary and then being non-negotiable, and everything else just works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's so easy to get focused on like the big things, like big trips with the family or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's the slow and steady elements that will get us across the finish line.
Very much. One of the things that I like to do with my kids now they're older and they're sort of through the other side, is I like to ask them what they remember. What are their memories? And if you think about your own childhood, what are the things that you remember? They rarely tell me the big holidays, of which we probably had 2 or 3. What they tell me is, I remember when we were playing this game, or we were just hanging out, or do you know what I mean? It's what we think makes memories for our kids and has less an impact, and what actually makes memories are two very, very different things. And so that always intrigues me, what our kids actually remember versus the memories we try and create. And so being intentional in creating memories is not about the big holidays. It's not about showing off wealth. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. I remember we did this thing with our kids where we would have one-on-one times. So my wife Sharon or I would take one of the kids to do something, right, and just hang out. It was like a one-on-one time. And the kids got to choose what we did, and they also had a budget. And so probably one of the times I remember the most is when Josh, I guess he was about 8, somewhere around there, I'm guessing. For some reason, I can't remember, it was something to do with work. I had the use of a van for 2 or 3 days, just a little minivan type thing. And I said to Josh, it's your time, one-on-one. What is it you want to do, right? Now, what does an 8-year-old boy want to do? And you have things in your head. Do you want to go bowling? Do you want to go laser tag? Do you want to go whatever? And Josh is, Dad, I've got a great idea. I'm like, what is it? He said, let's go take the van. We'll take it down to the park, put 2 chairs in the back. We'll watch a movie on the computer and eat kebabs. How does that sound? I said, that sounds like the most amazing fun in the world. And the whole thing cost me like £6 for 2 kebabs. And we watched a movie on the computer in the back of the van, and I can still remember it.
Yeah.
Making memories is more about things like that. And I guess this is one of the things that I've learned over the years. It's the big gestures are good. Like I've said to each of my kids as they were growing up, I really wanted to do, especially with the boys and my daughter as well. I said to the boys a few years ago, it was in 2018, they'd finished various states of school, so it was an ideal opportunity. I said, right, guys, we are going to do one mental trip. You choose where we go, what we do. So it's like a one-on-one time, but blown up. And I went with both my boys at the same time. So I'm like, it's dads and lads, what are we going to do? And I'm like, anywhere in the world that you want to go, right? You say that to a sort of teenager. My mind was boggling. I'm like, I wonder what they're going to come back with. At the time, they were both into CrossFit, right? And so they're like, Dad, we've decided, we've gone and had a chat. We've decided we want to go to the CrossFit Games in Madison. And we want to go to America. And I used to live in the States. And they're like, and we want to go see where you lived for a little while and meet the people that you're always talking about. I'm like, really? I was expecting the Bahamas, or let's go to Bali, or let's go to Australia. But no, they wanted to go to the CrossFit Games. So we went and we camped at the CrossFit Games. We had the best time, man. The best time. And my daughter, when I said the same thing to my daughter about 2 years ago, she's like, yeah, I just want to go to California and drive the Pacific Coast Highway. Is that it? Yeah. All right, let's do that. And so we did that. And so you can do the big mammoth trips and make them super intentional like that. And we had a great time on all of those trips. But I would say, and I have lots of memories from those trips, but I have more memories from the smaller events. And yeah, I don't know what the question was there, but we went off on one. Sorry.
That was a good answer to whatever the question was.
I love it. And I think that's such an important perspective to be aware of, because for me, just early in my dadhood, and then Andrew hoping to get there shortly, it's so easy to think, because we don't know, we haven't been through it, and it's easy to fall into the trap of, okay, like the big and shiny things. But it's great to hear that perspective that, no, it's the small things, it's the consistent things. And at the end of the day, it's making that time, it sounds, to be with your kids, especially like that one-on-one time.
That's exactly it. The kids remember the moments you went and spent time with them. And actually, if you think about your own childhood, I don't know what you remember from your own childhood, but I would say most of the memories are when you and your mum or your dad just had that special moment. And
I absolutely agree with that. Even when I was in college in New York City, like my dad came out to visit me, and we just hung around. We didn't do much. We didn't really go into the city, but we just spent that time together. And my mom was like, "You guys are boring doing that together." I'm like, "This is how we bond. This is what we like." With my mom, she likes to go out on small adventures, and so when Paul and I were in high school in New Hampshire, she'd come out to visit, and she's like, I really want to try this one hike. It cost the gas money to get to the mountain that we wanted to go to. And then when we lived in the Rockies too, there was one trail as a kid I always wanted to do. And so she made that a special event day just for the two of us to go hike this one trail that I've always wanted to hike. And so I absolutely agree with what you just said, Matt, that it's those, nothing grand or big, but it's just that she took the time out to do, those hikes or those trails, or that my dad just spent time watching a movie with me, or even with my grandparents. My fondest memories of my grandparents are when we'd go to the ice cream shop to get a milkshake.
And none of those require vast amounts of money.
Exactly.
And I think we've got it in our heads, especially in the society in which we live. And the UK and the US are very similar, you know, especially with teenagers. They've got to have the latest brand clothes. They've got to have the latest iPhone. They've got to have this. They've got to have that. And I would venture to say, actually, no, they don't. And I think if you bring them up in a way where that's not important. None of my kids came to me when they were teenagers and went, Dad, I need to have the latest brand clothes, or I need to have the latest iPhone. And it's not because we couldn't afford it. It's just because we'd brought them up differently, to value money differently. And so when we had those conversations, actually, to be fair, we didn't really have the conversations. And so we've been spared that, if that makes sense. And it means actually it's not then about the money, which is a really important thing in a society that values consumerism.
Right.
And values stuff. I've got to have the latest stuff. And if I don't have the latest stuff, then my value is worthless. And I think if you're there as a man, that's a horrible place to be.
Right.
And you'll pass that on to your kids. I think if that's where you are as a person, you really need to deal with that, because your kids will pick that up, especially your boys. And in fact, also your girls, your daughters, I think their self-esteem takes a bit of a nosedive, and they start to do things to... When you're like that, I think they can start to do things to impress boys when they're teenagers because something's not quite right. And I'm not saying that's true all of the time, and I'm not trying to heap condemnation on anybody. But I think when your kids are young, dealing with your own insecurities and your own problems has such a profound impact, not just on you, but on them. And that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about before, Andrew and I, because I think it's so easy for the kids to look up to their parents and see like individuals who do no wrong and just are omniscient beings, because we're the ones who are bringing them into the world and introducing them to everything, and we have more experience. But then by focusing on or working on what we need to work through and modeling that to our kids, we show them like, hey, we make mistakes too. We're not perfect, but we are going through the steps. We're on a journey and trying to get better day by day. And I feel like that has a big impact on them. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. I think I one of the things I try to do on a regular basis is apologize to the kids. I think if I've done something wrong or said something wrong or reacted in a bad way or not listened to them in the right way, or maybe I didn't make it home for dinner on time for whatever reason, the first thing you do is you go to the kids and you go, I'm really sorry, and I ask that you forgive me for doing that because that wasn't right. And my kids have always, I think, I don't know if I've never said whether they've appreciated it or not, but we still get on. I think owning your mistakes in front of your kids, again, you age context aware. If you've got a 6-year-old kid and you've got a porn addiction, don't talk to your 6-year-old kid about it, for crying out loud. I appreciate that's a really crazy example, but you get the point that actually context and age is important. But I think even before my kids could talk, I would apologize to them. So if I got annoyed because they were crying and wouldn't stop crying, and it was more for me than them, just to humble myself and go, yeah, I'm really sorry. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a powerful thing to do.
Yeah, and I think that kind of highlights how in parenting, it's so easy to get caught up in our own world as parents and how it affects us. But we have our children who... they themselves are like in their own world, or the world revolves around them, and they don't know how to deal with the difficult emotions or the challenge that they're currently faced with, and they're not thinking about how that affects us, and nor should they, per se. So I feel so much about parenting is moving beyond ourselves, and it forces us to move beyond ourselves and become better versions of ourselves so that we can meet our kids where they're
it's so true. You have to model it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kids do. There's a true saying, isn't there? Kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to model it. And I think if you apologize to your kids, they will model that. But if you apologize to your kids and it's empty and you don't change your behavior, guess what they're going to do? They're going to model that, right? If you model things like, you can't say to your kids, don't lie, always tell the truth, and then the very next breath someone calls the house and the kid answers a phone and they say to their dad, oh, it's your mum on the phone, and he goes, oh, I'm not in, tell her I'm not here. It's a bit like there's a double standard, and I think you have to hold yourself to a much higher standard. And the reality of it is the kids will do what you do, they won't do what you say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to bring it back to something you said about the consumerism and whatnot, and how especially affects like the girls' self-esteem. And Paul's got a 4-year-old daughter. My 2 nieces are in their teenage years,
Mm-hmm.
and boys typically want to be like their dads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy to model. Like, as long as you're living a good modeling life, they'll pick up on that. But like, how much different is it being a girl dad than a boy dad?
It's very different. I think my relationship with my daughter is different to the relationship with my sons.
Mm-hmm.
I am modeling how to be a man to my boys, but to my daughter I'm modeling what actually a man can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she dates or when she has a boyfriend, the biggest male influence in her life is me, and so she is judging that guy against me. And I think if I'm the kind of dad that gives her everything I want, I'm really screwing up her husband's life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We all know women like that have had dads wrapped around their little finger, and they've had everything they want. And so when they get married, because their husband's on doing, they're like, hang on a minute, there's conflict and there's issue. And conversely, I think daughters where the dads have been distant, not always, not all the time, and I'm definitely not a psychologist, but you can definitely see the links in terms of the kind of guys that they then start to date. And so I think the dad-daughter relationship is so powerful and so very different to boys. I know with my boy, how would I describe it? I think with my boys, I'm, like I say, I try and model what it means to be a man. I will discipline them. I will take, even now in their 20s, if they do something stupid, I'm going to go, dude, what are you doing? I have those kind of conversations with them. With my daughter, I am much more of a protector, right? Whereas with my boys, I'm the kind of guy that will just literally drive 2 miles, throw them out the car and say, get home, because you need to learn a little bit of resilience. I'm not saying that I did that. If social services are listening, I never did that. But I think with boys, I would put them in scenarios where they had to become resilient. And it's not that I've not done that with my daughter, don't get me wrong, but there is a tension there which says I need to teach her how to be resilient. So I would take her to martial arts lessons, for example. Right. But I'm also slightly more protective. So when my sons bring a girlfriend round, we had this code actually. It's really funny. We had this code when the kids were growing up, and I was a big fan of the boys and Zoe not dating until they were 16. I couldn't control that. It wasn't a hard written rule, but it was just something that we talked about. And I said to the boys, if they ever brought a girl home and I thought this something's not right, then my secret code to them would be, whilst they were there with their girlfriend, I would go over to the radio or Siri or whatever in Apple Music, and I would put on the Tom Jones song Delilah, because it's a song that everybody knows, but of course the story of Samson and Delilah was an awful woman, wasn't she? And so I was like, that's my cue that you might want to rethink your relationship. So I did watch out for my boys, whereas with Zoe, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Bad Boys 2, with the scene with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith and Reggie come in to take Martin Lawrence's daughter out for the first time to the prom. Yeah. And I think when you watch that scene, every single dad is going, oh yes. And if you've not seen it, I would encourage you to just go to YouTube and YouTube it, because it will be there. But there are, with my sister, with my cousins, with whoever, we have a house here full of lodgers, And whenever the lodgers get boyfriends, I'm the same with them. I'll take the boyfriends aside and say, listen, just so you know, whatever they're living under my roof, I'm the protector. I think you're a nice guy. We're going to start there. I actually like you. If I don't, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to tell them I don't like them. But fundamentally, I'm going to have very straight conversations with you. If I think you're out of line, I am going to tell you in a way which is abundantly clear.
Right.
And so I've had several conversations with guys in my back garden and just gone, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's just something about men protecting women, and I appreciate it's not a popular thing to say these days, but chivalry is not dead. And I think I remember what I was like when I was their age.
Mm-hmm.
An older man needed to take me aside and clip me around the head and say, listen, don't act like that. That's out of order. But no one ever did, and so I feel like I need to.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you. I like that answer a lot. That's something, especially, like, I feel that way with my nieces. Obviously, I'm not their dad, but as their uncle,
I think
still
it's
have
their
some of that.
Yeah, and I think actually is because I have a niece. She is beautiful. She's a 17-year-old niece. I can say things to her that a dad can't.
Yeah.
Right? So if she has a boyfriend, because there's the Romeo and Juliet effect, isn't it? You don't want to be too harsh on them that they go and sneak behind and do things hidden. You want to set a boundary, but at the same time, if they're going to break that, you want to know about it, and you want that transparency and honesty. John, my brother, he has to walk a very tight line. I don't.
Right.
Not at all. Mm-hmm. So when I find out about it, the first thing I do is get my niece on the phone. What are you doing? What's going on here? Because I can say the things that my brother can't. And I think I have that relationship with my niece, whom I adore, and she knows I adore her, and we have a really great relationship. I really love hanging out with her. She's just such an awesome person. But that means I can say things to her that maybe my brother can't.
Right.
Not can't is maybe the wrong word, but I might get away with it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I think being an uncle is quite a sacred privilege in many ways.
I agree.
And I think, are they the kids of a brother or a sister?
My older brother.
So an older brother, and I would be having conversations with him about, let me know if I need to take him aside. I'll take him for ice cream, sit him down, and I can have those conversations, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But I think if you've got that understanding with your brother, which I have, and conversely, I think if my daughter Zoe, she started hanging around guys, I would fully expect my brother to say things both to her and to him that maybe I can't. And because my brother is ex-military, he can say them in a way which does inject the fear of God into the young lad. So.
Very impactful. Yeah.
Very much.
I like that perspective because I think maybe this is just me, but I think it's like easy to be like, okay, I'm focusing on my kids. I'll let other siblings or friends focus on their kids. But it evokes it takes a village.
It totally does. Yeah.
And we're in it together, and why not help others? And you talked about like missing some of that, like not having some of that growing up, like, but how much value it brings. And we just had my sister and her family in town this weekend, and it was five kids under 5 running around our house, and so we're not having those tough conversations yet, but it's such a wonderful thing to start building those relationships and to hold your sister's kids in your arms and to make the silly jokes or there are times like where they're doing something maybe a little dangerous or maybe a little unkind and you have to call them out on it, but that also provides that sense of security, I think.
Yeah, it does. And I think kids especially like boundaries. And I think they thrive with boundaries, again, contrary to this sort of gentle parenting nonsense which is around, and sorry to be blunt, but it is utter nonsense. But I think with one of the things I would recommend you guys do as your kids get older is have your house the place to be. So we were super intentional, Sharon and my wife, about this in the sense that I wanted to make sure that nobody influences my kids as they're grown up more than their friends. Do you know what I mean? It's one of the key influences in their life. I can talk about TV, I can talk about social media, but fundamentally who they hang around with has a big impact. And so I said to Sharon, I said, I think we just need to make our house like the place to be. So when the kids are together as teenagers and they go, where should we go hang out? I wanted all of Josh's and all of Zach's and all of Zoe's mates to go, let's go to your house, because they felt at home. And so one of the things that we did to encourage that was when the kids got to a certain age, we had a little ceremony, for want of a better expression, and we called it fridge rights. And so there was this moment where we said to the kids that, or to their kids' friends, usually when they're like 13, 14, something like that, listen, you no longer have to come to me and ask for a drink. You don't have to come to me and ask for anything out of my fridge. You have fridge rights in my house. That means even if Josh isn't here and you're walking past, you can come into the house, and eventually we gave them all keys, but you could come into the house, you could go to the fridge, you can open that fridge and you can take anything apart from the beer, right? And even that I didn't mind as much, as long as their parents were okay with them having a beer. And I think that, I remember there was one young guy called Sam who's such a good guy, and one of my son's friends, he came into the house. We did the whole fridge rights thing. I remember watching him the first time go into the fridge and open it, and he stopped and he looked at me, because I was in the kitchen, I was watching him, and he said, I've got fridge rights, right? And I went, oh, you have absolutely got fridge rights. And he was like, never again did he ask me for anything from my fridge. That guy could eat too, and he could drink stuff. But what I realized with Josh's friends over a period of time, because they were the first guys we did this with, what started to happen was more food appeared in my fridge than they consumed. So they would bring around the pizza and they would cook it, and then they would just leave stuff in the fridge for me to have the leftovers. And it was wonderful, actually. And when Sam turned sort of 18, 19, he just said, Matt, I want to take you out for a drink, because in England you have to be 18 for alcohol. And when he turned 18, 19, he said, Matt, I want to buy you a drink. So we went to the pub and he bought me a drink, and it was just me and him. We just chatted for an hour and a half. Just got on really well. And I just think that's awesome. I wanted to get on well with his friends. I wanted the friends to not necessarily like me unconditionally, but I got on well with them. Yeah. I understood what motivated them. So last night, Zoe was in the house with her friends baking. They both finished exams, both over 18. Sat outside having a beer, and Zoe's friend, who she's been friends with since they were embryos, basically, she said, oh, can I have a beer? And she just turned 18, first time she'd actually drank alcohol. I said, of course you can have a beer. You have fridge rights in my house. I said, what I don't want is for you to go and take 4 beers and get sloshed. I said, but anytime you want a beer, I will happily buy you a beer. So she goes to the beer fridge, gets a beer, and now she'll come in, she'll go get a beer, and she'll get me one at the same time. It's brilliant. Fridge rights, I can highly recommend it.
I like that.
Yeah.
You want to make your house the place where people want to hang out.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you want to invest in, I think. And so understanding what's important to your friends and their friends. Like Josh, he was never really big into gaming, but they did like board games. And so we were like, let's make sure we've got the board games. And let's make sure that when the guys come around to do board games, we've got enough snacks to feed an army, right? Those kind of things. It's understanding that. And they're like, oh, every time we do games at your house, it's amazing. I go home with a belly full of Wotsits. And do you know what I mean? It's just, we just had a great time. Yeah. And understanding that, I think, is super cool. So yeah, make your place the place to hang out, because then you get to influence their friends, you get to understand who their friends are, and you get to become part of the crowd. And I think that's quite lovely.
Yeah. Did you ever encounter less desirable friends, or was it pretty consistent?
I have to give credit to my kids, because in terms of less desirable friends, they never really came around, because my kids didn't really want to be friends with those kind of people. And I think that's both a value thing. I think we made a really good decision about sending our kids to a sort of independent Christian school, so we knew that they were with kids like-minded, valued parents and all that sort of stuff. But I think our kids, it's not that I got on with everybody that they brought round, but I think our kids had enough street smarts to know how to pick good friends. And again, this was something that we taught them as they were growing up.
Yeah. So how do you teach something like that?
I think you just have lots of conversations, and every moment's a teaching moment, right? So if you're watching TV and you're watching, I don't know, a Disney movie or whatever, and somebody falls out with somebody else, you can go, well, what did you think about that? Mm-hmm. How do you think they could have done that different? Do you think they were a good friend or a bad friend? I think it's not so much telling them, it's just more engaging them in conversation. I think parenting is more about coaching in many ways. So yes, there are boundaries. Yes, there are borders to this game. Yes, there are lines that you do not and will not cross.
Right.
But the rest of it is all about coaching. Let me help you play this game better. Because again, one of the things, we've got three kids, all of them are distinct. All of their personalities are unique. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to all of them. How one does study and how the other one does study is different. How one learns is different to the other one. And so one kid's really into reading. The other kid is into running around the garden with a BB gun, shooting stuff. It's okay, I can't create a manual, but what I can do is coach. And coaching, I think, is great because it's not judgmental. It's just asking lots of questions. And then you get to the phase of life where your kids actually ask your advice. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, Dad, I don't want you to coach me. I just want you to tell me what you think. And you just go, oh, it's interesting. Okay, this is what I think. Right. And so, yeah, I think it's a lot like that. Okay. Conversation's a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one question I wanted to ask you being a successful entrepreneur, I'm sure it's come with many failures along the way to get to where you are. How do you handle those? But more importantly, like, how do you use those as teaching moments towards your children to handle failures in their own day-to-day life and to move beyond?
It's a really good question, Andrew, because I think the type of parenting I see at the moment is to shield kids from any and all harm.
Exactly.
And I get the desire to do that because I'm a parent. I understand why you want to protect kids. The trouble is when kids leave home is they have no ability then to deal with adversity because they've never had to face it because Dad shielded them from everything or Dad's always provided or whatever. So there was one time, 2012, we had an online business that was turning over 6 million a year. So it was doing all right. And we sold a lot of product from one particular supplier. And overnight, that supplier changed their terms and conditions, which fundamentally meant the very next day my business halved, and the day after that it halved again. And so it all went very wrong very quickly. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what that meant. Did we have to sell the house? All kinds of questions that came up. And I didn't want to worry the kids who were young, but neither did I want to shield them from it because you've got to learn that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. And actually watching how your parents deal with adversity, well, it's that modeling thing again, that old discipleship thing again, right, isn't it? It's that kids do what you do. And so we sat them down at the dinner table. We talked about the whole thing that was going on and what it might mean and how Dad would have less money. And there were concepts that kids couldn't understand. Right. Like I didn't talk to them about mortgage payments because 6 years old. I don't even get mortgage payments and I'm in my 50s, let alone when I was 6 years old. And I remember it really clearly. We just were really open with the kids in a way that they understood and in a way that wouldn't mean they couldn't sleep that night. Yeah. Because at the same time as dealing with the trauma, you've got to give hope, and I think you have to instill faith. Mm-hmm. And so what happened when we did that was Zach, so my youngest son, Zach, he had spent, and bearing in mind, Zach at the time, 2012, so he would have been 8 years old. For 18 months, think about this as an 8-year-old kid. For the previous 18 months, he had saved every single penny that had come across his way. He'd not spent any money on anything. For his birthday, for Christmas, he just wanted money. And he saved everything. And it took him 18 months, and he saved up £180, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money. And I said to him that when he set his initial savings goal, I said to him, listen, I will give you, for every pound you save towards, he wanted this Star Wars Lego ship. And it was like It was like almost £400. It was it was crazy money, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was like 400 quid. And so it must have been 360 quid, because I think I said to him, listen, if you save 180, I will give you the other 180. Because there's no way an 8-year-old kid who doesn't, we never paid our kids pocket money. So to save 180 quid is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll give you the other half. And it's okay. So we'd got to that stage where when I sat down and told them about the business, Zach had saved the £180. So Zach, my 8-year-old son, gets up from the table. He goes upstairs, grabs the £180 in cash, brings it down and gives it to me. And says, just put that towards the money, Dad.
Wow.
My heart broke and melted into 1,000 pieces. And I will and that's just Zach all over, actually. He's just a real generous kid. And I would never, ever forget that moment. And of course, there's no way I was ever going to accept the money. And yes, if I did pay him the £180 that I said. And I think I've got a photo of him stood outside the Lego shop. And in the time where it was horrific for the business, one of the best memories I have was me and him going to the Lego shop and buying this Lego thing that he then spent days and days building. And I was so proud of him. So I think kids are more resilient than they think you are. I think they are. And I think actually it's not my job to shield them from everything. It's my job to help them understand how to navigate the trials and tribulations they in effect will face.
Yes.
And help them build resilience, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And if I do that job well, then when they fly the nest, life will be a lot easier for them.
Yeah. Yeah, because on the flip side, if you spend their childhood protecting them and they find themselves out in the world, they're not going to know how to deal with adversity. And that will end up much worse for them.
I do that a lot, actually. We've employed people over the years. And again, I'm not stereotyping. I don't want to go too much into generational things. But one of the things that I have noticed over the years is most people don't stick in a job. So people, right. When I was growing up, everyone was in a job for 40 years. Now you're in a job for 40 minutes and you kind of like, I'm out of here. Yeah. And it's like, why the boss said something mean to me. Mean? Are you mad? What do you mean mean? It's grow up, will you? It's not the schoolyard. And it's the most extraordinary thing. And so we live in a culture which prizes being a victim. And that whole victimhood thing, and it's a status symbol in so many ways, and actually it's just a lack of resilience. So when people say things to me like, not to me, but when you hear people say things like, oh, that's hatred or that's abuse, you're abusing me by saying that, you're like, no, let me take you to somebody who has actually been really abused.
Right.
And then tell me that me saying that I don't agree with this particular political philosophy you have is abuse. They're not in the same camp. And so we've raised a generation of people which is like, everything has to be perfect. And by perfect, it means everything has to be how I want it. And if it's not, I'm the victim, and it's therefore classed as abuse. And we have kids then who will go from job to job because it's not the perfect thing and somebody was mean to them. Whereas I never wanted that for my kids. I wanted them to be much more resilient. I grew up in a very different way, and I think resilience actually when you're growing up is not a bad thing.
No, not at all. And if you have that resilience, if you have that, like the opposite of the victim mindset would be probably, one term for it could be extreme ownership. So if you are... I
love that book, by the way.
Yeah, Jocko Willink, yeah.
Great book.
Phenomenal.
Great book.
I definitely recommend it for anybody listening who hasn't read it. But when you take ownership of what the adversity that you're facing, whether it's truly adversity or not, you're in control. Like you are calling the shots, as opposed to if somebody said something mean to me or whatever, then you're helpless because you're reliant on how they're acting or whatever. So it's the approach you took with your kids seems to be very empowering.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's always right, and I think there are times when you step in when you do protect, and I don't know if I've always got the balance right. But I think I have resilient kids now. And actually I think we have a lot of conversations, certainly over the last however many years, about a lot of the stuff politically and culturally that's been coming out. Not because I necessarily wanted them to think the way that I thought, but I wanted them to at least question what was going on and to think critically about some of these things.
Absolutely.
Rather than just absorb them, because you'll go to a university, and the university, love my time at university, would never change it, but universities are notoriously liberal and teach some incredible nonsense to kids. And I needed my kids to understand how to critically think around some of these things.
Right.
And one of them being the ability to be resilient, I think, and not shy away from a problem, or owning the problem. The extreme ownership thing, I think, is totally true. Yeah. You just got to read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning,
that's one
and
of
you'll
our favorites.
go, you can't read that book and go, well, yeah, I am the victim because someone said something mean to me. You read that book and go, man, I am under conviction for being such a narcissist. Do you know what I mean? It's the most extraordinary thing, and I think if he can do what he did in concentration camps in World War II Nazi land, I'm nowhere near. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. Yeah. So I totally agree.
Yeah, that's phenomenal advice, and I think it comes down to. You talk about like critical thinking, something that's really important to us, Andrew and I, and we've talked about is teaching our kids how to think, not what to think. And you also talked about you don't always get it right. We might not always be right about everything, but so if we teach them how to think, how to critically think, how to observe and analyze, then maybe they'll get some things right that we haven't. And
let your kids make mistakes, right? Yeah. So Zach came to me a few years ago and he said, Dad, I'm thinking of doing this thing. Now, my initial response was to say to him, don't do it. I don't understand why you would want to do that because of reasons X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay, why do you think that? And he thought about it, and I'm like, and then he asked me about it, and I said, the opposite side would maybe be this. I said, but here's what I'm going to do, Zach. And he was living at home. He was 16, 17 years old. I said to him, listen, I'm not going to lay down the law because that would be the easy thing for me to do and a cop-out for you. I want you to go away and think about this. And go away and think about it for at least 30 days before you make the decision. If you want to talk to me about it some more, you can do. I'm not going to bug you about it, but go away and think about it. And then in 30 days, you and I will have another conversation. And 30 days later, he came back and said, Dad, I've thought about it. I've written stuff out. I've gone and listened to this podcast and I've read this and this is what I want to do. And it still was not what I wanted him to do. What do you do in that situation? Brilliant, son. Go for it. That's what you do, because you're like, I have told him what I think could go wrong. And when it does go wrong, it's not my job to say I told you. But it is my job to allow my kids to make mistakes in the safety of the home and learn from these things. And I think, had I have laid down the law, that would have damaged my relationship with Zach. Doing it the way that I didn't get the outcome that I wanted. But Zach learned a lot through it. And actually, at the end of it, yeah, you're right, Dad. Okay, that's awesome, isn't it? And it's not that I needed him to say that, or not that I needed that validation. I think giving your kids the ability to make the mistakes is a really important thing to be able to do.
Yeah. And you're probably solidifying yourself as somebody who they can turn to for advice, and especially given the experience, because in that case, oh yeah, Dad was right, as opposed to he would more likely than not have had that same realization if you had forced him to.
Yeah, exactly. And even if I was wrong and he was right, it was still the right thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, Matt, what a great time. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us and such great insights along the way. I think this is a good time to wrap it up. Two things before we wrap up. One, what is one thing that you want to tell our listeners? And two, how can they find you?
Just go to mattedmundson.com. Everything's on that website. One thing to tell your listeners, I think there's a wonderful verse in the Bible which says, be strong and act like men. It's in the New Testament. And religious affiliations aside, act like men is advice 2,000 years ago that still carries through today. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a man for you? I'm not talking about the guy that gets up, does 100,000 push-ups and then, goes mountain climbing all day. That's not my definition of manhood. I think you have to understand what being a man in this world actually means, because if there's anything this world is crying out for, it is men. And it is especially men who will be fathers. The West, I think, is in chaos because of absent fathers. In many ways,
Yes.
you can trace a lot of problems back to absent fathers. And that's because men have allowed society, I think, in many ways, to dictate to them what being a man is, what being a father is, being passive, being wet. I think, act like men. That would be my advice. Don't be afraid to be the man that God has called you to be. Stand out from the crowd and just do that, right? Because the world will thank you for it. Your kids will thank you for it. Everyone will thank you for it. I think it's a really important thing.
Fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, yeah, great spot to end on. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, be sure to check out Matt's stuff. And if you liked this episode, be sure to share with anybody who you think would get benefit from this. All right. And with that, thank you, everybody. And until next time.
Yes. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Paul. And thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Thank you. All right.